Hi and welcome back to Cricket Insights. Just going to do a review of the second test between South Africa and India, with South Africa winning that test and taking a 2-0 lead in that series. John, your thoughts on that test?
I think this test match, India should have put up a better performance. This loss would be a much better pill to swallow than the first one. The first one in Cape Town, it was tailor-made for South Africans with the seeming conditions coming in after the rain. So India could accept the defeat having put up a good fight. But over here, Centurion, which is typically a faster pitch than Newlands, and India got served up a subcontinental type of pitch. And they would have expected themselves to have performed much better. They started off well enough. South Africa made a good start, and then they pulled them back at 332 to 335. And India should have really fought back really hard and taken a pivotal first innings lead. But because that would be key on a pitch which returned on the last day, and India batting fourth would want some cushion for themselves. But it was just some schoolboyish cricket from them, some abysmal running. Pujara being run out twice in the match. When your one-drop batsmen along with the openers are the ones who lay the foundation, I thought it was pretty poor on his part. Pandya with that schoolboyish run out when he and Kohli were in a position to really take the game away from South Africa. The game was in the balance, and if they had just stuck around together, they could have really taken it away from South Africa, getting a really good first innings lead. But that run out cost India, and it resulted in a 28-run deficit. So I think that's where India really faltered in this test match. Having said that, I thought Kohli played one of his best innings ever. It was a real captain's knock, put his head down, was focused, and it was just a majestic innings of 153. That was the only plus side as far as I could see in terms of the batting for India. The bowlers, kudos to them, and nobody expected to have any impact. They've taken 40 wickets so far in the series, so they've all been on their mark, but they've also been guilty, having South Africa at 17 for 3 in the first test match, 3 for 2 here, letting them get back in the game as they did. So I think even though the bowling can't be faulted too much, these are areas they have to improve, but the batting was just shoddy. And in the last innings, I mean, all credit to Angiri, not taking anything away from him, but some of the wickets the Indians gave just gifted him, like Ashwin and Pandya, and they didn't show the stomach for a fight. That was the most disappointing thing. Not coming out as number one team saying, we're going to fight all the way, we lose by 30, 40, 50 runs, but just surrendering meekly, you don't expect that.
Yeah, I thought that wicket was always going to be hard to bat on day 5, and they didn't do as well as they should have. But it was early in the test, they needed to set up a win, or at least getting a draw out of it. And they did do that to an extent late on the first day, where they took 3 quick wickets. And then on the second day, South Africa were just crawling along at 1.6 and over, dropping 2 catches in 2 balls. And I felt sorry for Ashwin, who'd bowled well, and having those 2 catches dropped. And the second one was an absolute sitter. And then it went to South Africa, sort of thought, oh, here's our opportunities, woke them up. 40 runs came off the next 8 overs. They got to 330, and it was a score that was always going to be certainly a competitive score, and it ended up being a winning score. And going back to that Pandya run out, which was, India was getting their way in front, and for such a foolish run out at test level, just to me shows a little bit of immaturity on Pandya's behalf. He needs to, that shouldn't be happening. I don't care if it's your 5th test or your 1st test, that should not be happening. So he needs to grow. There's a little bit of growing up to do there. And also, I just want to focus on India's selections. I bring you into this because Ravi Shastri, who I reckon is great for Indian cricket. I just enjoy listening to him, but I think he's got this wrong.
Absolutely. I think the think tank of him and Kohli, now that Rahane was not playing, who as a vice captain he should have been part of the think tank, but since he wasn't playing, you would think that most decisions were taken by Shastri and Kohli. And it's really sad because, if I have to be quite honest, I was a big fan of Ravi Shastri in his playing days. He was a player with limited abilities, but made the most of it. He started his batting career. He started as a left-arm off-spinner, batting at number 11, and went all the way up to being opener for India. So he did justice to his limited talent, and he is like Shane Warne in terms of captaincy. He was the best captain India never had, long-term at least. Very shrewd tactician, and with his tactical acumen and Kohli's drive to make India the best team in the world in all conditions, you think they would get it together, but they got it abysmally wrong. As we mentioned before, the openers, Dhawan instead of Rahul. The big one, Rohit Sharma, based on current one-day form, not even test form, compared to Rahane, who's got a phenomenal overseas record. And then, for me, which I could not understand the life of me, benching your best fast bowler, Umesh Yadav, who's been a standout pace bowler in the home season that you won, taking 33 wickets, dismantling an Australian team which has been, bred on these kind of tracks. You have your quickest bowler, your best fast bowler on the bench, your best overseas batsman on the bench, your technically more accomplished batsman on the bench, and finally, Bhuvaneshwar Kumar, who delivered a outstanding all-round performance in the first test, is benched. So, I do not know the message that they're sending, and India just looked like a team who were not playing as a unit, which they did all along at home, and it seemed like everybody was tense about their own places in the team. And if you're going to play that way, you're never going to win. So I think the selection was the biggest fiasco, apart from lack of preparation. So you're right on the selection.
Yeah, I just think Rahane, I couldn't work that out. I was convinced he'd play in the first test. I thought they'd make the change in the second test. It hasn't happened. So interested to see if Shastri and Kohli just say, all right, we got it wrong, we'll bring him in, or whether they stick to their guns there in the third test. Just going to the South African team, look at their batting and bowling. What's your take on their batting first up?
Well, South Africa, to be quite honest, have also struggled with their batting, and in home conditions that's surprising. But they have all contributed when it was required. Mind you, none of them have scored 100. There's not been a South African 100 scored in this series, but they're still 2-0 up. So they've done enough just to keep their noses ahead of India. But they have been struggling in the series too. The standout performer for me has been AB de Villiers. He has counter-attacked and he's played those vital innings whenever the team required it. I think the 2 years hiatus from the longest format has done him a world of good. And like Sachin Tendulkar, once the burden of captaincy was removed from him, he's just playing freely, doing what he does best, contributing the way only he can, making those runs when everybody else was all at sea. In the first test, they were 17 for 3 and he came and counter-attacked the brilliant 65. The second innings of the Cape Town test, he made a vital 35 when the ball was just seaming around everywhere. And then in this test again, when South Africa reduced to 3 for 2, he made a fluent 80 and combined 141 run partnership with Elgar. So for me, the standout performer has been AB de Villiers, but they've all contributed in their own ways. Faf du Plessis, we can't forget, in the first test with ABD, he made 62, if I remember correctly, and shared in a vital partnership. And then again in this test match, he made 46, and I think he made another 40 in the first test also. So he's been contributing in his own stoic way that he usually does, blocking and gathering the runs slowly that he does, but making enough. Amla made an 80 in this test match, Markram made 94, and Elgar, though really scratchy, he stuck around to make 61, which was really important in this test match when South Africa were in real trouble. So while the bowling has not been solid, they've just done enough as a unit, nose ahead in front of India.
Yeah, Faf has been a bit of a rock for them, and de Villiers, what he's done, he's just turned both test matches. Just when they needed someone to turn the match in their favour, he's done it twice, so he's been excellent. And it's hard for me to admit, but Faf has been a bit of a rock for the South Africans. In terms of their bowling, I've got to say I'm really impressed with the new player, Ngidi. A really great debut, and with Rabada, they've got two bowlers that can take him ahead for the next 5 to 10 years. What are your thoughts on those?
For sure. A big, strong lad, isn't he? He looks like a combination of Devin Malcolm and Patrick Patterson. Real strong action into the crease. And the ball he got Kohli on the third evening was a gem of delivery, and that kind of sealed the match. Because once Kohli was out, South Africa knew that they had this in the bag unless somebody really came out and surprised. So he's a real find for them, along with Rabada. Steyn, whenever he comes back from injury, although he is struggling right now. Morkel, I think they've got a good unit, and they've got Philander, who, if injury-free, will always be there. The playing 11, and they have a backup bowler in Dwayne Oliver, who's played about 5 test matches. So they have 5 or 6 really good bowlers in their ranks, and I think South African pace unit will be well served, like you mentioned.
Yeah, I think it's good for world cricket when you have good, strong bowling lineups. Australia and South Africa both got it. You look at England, you sort of think there's no one really coming through.
Right.
But if you have teams with good, strong bowling lineups, it serves well for world cricket and should serve South Africa well for the next, many years to come. In terms of the third test, now we're going to look forward.
All right.
India, you think, have to make changes. What are your changes?
for sure they have to make changes. They have to ring in the changes big time. I think first and foremost they need to get Umesh Yadav in. I know the series is lost, but they have to play like the number one team in the world, saying, we are playing for our pride, and we want to show that the record that we have strung up all these for the last couple of years have not just been at home. We're not Tigers at home, but we can play overseas. Ring in the big changes, go for it. So Umesh Yadav has to come into the playing 11. It depends who they move out, either Shami or Bumrah or Ishant Sharma, but he has to come. Bring back Bhuvaneshwar Kumar. He's been a proven performer. Get him in. Rahane is the obvious one for Rohit Sharma. Get him into the playing 11, and I would say these have to be the changes. Mind you, Pujara as a number 3 has done really abysmal overseas, an average of 26. So I think if he's not in form, maybe drop him down the order, and they could consider Rahane playing at one drop because he's technically sound, and I think if they have him at one drop, he could give the stability that they're lacking right now. Maybe Pujara still plays, move him down to Rahane's position at 5 and just see. India did that in the 2001 series when Rahul Dravid was one drop and struggling, and Lakshman was fluent. They got him into number 3 in that series changing and career defining innings that Lakshman played. So I think they can tinker around with it a bit. Maybe get Rahane at one drop and move Pujara down the order and just see how it goes.
Yeah.
It can give Pujara the time also he requires to just settle in it.
Yeah, and it is a concern that his record at home is so much better than away, and it also helped Dravid, didn't it, in that series. Looking around at other series going on around the world, and Pakistan, my favourite team, Pakistan, I just love the way they can win one trophy 6 months ago and then turn up and get a hiding 5-0.
Right.
What are your thoughts on
shocking, but then that is the unpredictability of Pakistan cricket. Soaring in the sky one moment and then, right in the abyss the next. So a 5-0 blanking was not expected because they have the bowlers who could. The New Zealand conditions suit the Pakistan kind of bowlers, seam and swing movement. So you thought they would do well. The batsmen are big and strong enough to clear the small grounds in New Zealand. But they just didn't look like, again, they were up for it, being bowled out in one match for 74. It's not a team which looks like a trophy-winning champion team. So, but it's surprising. Having said that, they could just turn around and win the next series. So
yeah, that's right.
I wouldn't like to predict too far with Pakistan cricket.
Yeah, they can be 6 for 16 one day and 2 for 300 the next. And England coming back well against Australia.
Oh, that's a real shocker, but a welcome sign at least. I know that they got a hiding in the Test series, but they're still showing that they're up for it, and they're not just going to be rolled over. I think the infusion of some fresh energy to this team has helped. Alex Hales, Owen Morgan, they are not Jason Roy, who scored that brilliant 100 in the first one. They're not carrying the scars of the Test series with them, so they've infused that fresh energy and spirit into the team, and it's rubbing off on players who have been scarred like Joe Root and Chris Wokes, and giving them some fresh, much required energy, and it's shown. 2-0 up in a 5-match series. Australia is playing catch up, and they'll really have to play out of the skins to win the series back.
Yeah, and Steve Smith not quite performing to the level he did in the Test series. And the last one is Zimbabwe versus Sri Lanka over there, or tri-series actually. Zimbabwe knocked off Sri Lanka, now Bangladesh have knocked off Sri Lanka.
Well, Sri Lanka have a lot on their plate and a lot of issues they need to resolve. I think they're just slipping further and further into the abyss. I think the main thing over here they need to first resolve is the captain. They've had 6 captains in the past 1 year, and that's not sending a good sign. Each captain having their own strategy, which is the best team. So there's no consistency in the team. There's no consistency in the captain. I think first and foremost they have to sort out who their captain is. I think they'll have to do something like what South Africa did in 2003. Once the World Cup was over and Sean Pollock they thought was not the best choice, they took a young Graham Smith, who they had identified as a leader, will serve South Africa, and just have him take the plunge and made him captain, though he was just 5 tests old. And look what that did for South African cricket. He was a brilliant leader, served them for a long time. I think Sri Lanka has to go that way first. Identify their leader, identify the captain who's going to serve them for the next 5-10 years, and then build a team around it. So I think that's the way for Sri Lanka to move forward. Otherwise, they just slip further and further.
Well, Sri Lanka probably going through their hardest period since the 80s, so it's a real test for them. But and the last thing is the Under-19s Cricket World Cup is going on. Caught any of that?
Not too much as of now, to be quite honest. It's still early days. Everybody is playing. We had that one incident of the run-out between West Indies and South Africa, which made big news. But all in all, it's still early days. But we'll definitely be keeping a closer watch from next week onwards. And obviously, once the series is over, India South Africa, we'll be gluing in more. But sure, look at that.
Okay, well that's it from us today. We thank you for your company and we look forward to seeing you next week. It's bye for now.